So I am waiting for the sunset. I was recording some violin songs today at the beach, and there has hardly been anyone here, so it's been a good day for recording. There's these little birds that are so cute. And then I can hear the mourning doves. There must be a lot of mourning doves here because I can hear them quite well, many of them. But anyway, it's a very beautiful place to be, and I'm looking forward to what the sunset will look like. It's not a lot of clouds out, but it's really nice. It's not as hot as it has been. So I thought I'd continue on Nehemiah theme, try to get this book finished up. But these birds are so cute. So cute. So anyway, we had gotten to the part where they're about to dedicate the wall. And I love this part because it has to do with worship, and I love worship, and I'm called to worship, and I think we're all called to worship Him in spirit and in truth. And in our lives, I feel like Nehemiah's wall can represent the truth, and then the doors can represent His presence. And it says, open the gates and the King of Glory will come in. And our hearts are where He resides. Our hearts, that is the place where He comes. And it's a beautiful privilege that we get to have communion with the King, and we can enter His presence with thanksgiving and praise. So Nehemiah had half of the people go on this side of the wall and half of them go on that side of the wall. And it was singers and Levites and musicians and gatekeepers, and everyone was rejoicing. And they said that the rejoicing was so loud you could hear it from afar off. I just think that's awesome. And that's what our lives, when we know Him in truth and we have His spirit, we worship Him in spirit and truth, there is a joy and a zeal and you cannot hide it. And it's very contagious, actually, when you experience it and other people are experiencing it. Then other people who don't even normally experience it, it's that kind of thing that spreads quickly. And I just love it that He organized how it was supposed to be and what they were going to do, and they rejoiced. It was in song, and it was dedicating this wall to God. And they had, committed themselves to going back to the precepts of God. And they made this covenant of going and honoring the things that God had wanted them to do, and keeping the Sabbath. And we know that in the new covenant, that's our Sabbath day rest. And that they just wanted to adhere the things of God. And there's great joy when you do life His way. It's life and more abundant, and entering His rest is one of the best things you can do. Cease from your own works and enter His rest. And so they had covenanted together and made a pact that they were going to walk in His ways. And then they dedicated this wall, and there was great rejoicing and singing. And I think of when, I think it was Josiah, but I don't remember, there was a king, and they were going out to war, and actually God says, hey, put the musicians first. And there's this thing of worship can be warfare, and it's like fighting battles that are invisible. And the enemy, we have a spiritual battle. I mean, there's a battle between light and darkness, between good and evil, between the demonic realm and the angelic realm, and Satan is no match for God. But it's these principalities and powers, rulers in high places, and they hate worship. And when we go and we actually are worshiping God, oh wow. And it's like he was right on cue. Being God, and he just starts like squawking as he's flying above me right at that moment. It's awesome. As we worship God, there's a battle that's being won, and we're actually won the battle. We're actually rejoicing in the fact that he's already done that for us, and that we have won, and we're in the process of seeing all things of not, but we're in the process of renewing our mind and obtaining for ourselves this victory that he already won, because he already won it. But we are taking it for ourselves and saying, I believe this is my victory too. And then we're also claiming that and contending for that victory for other people and for all nations and peoples, and that they would come to know this great King. And it's many times accomplished in worship. These birds are so cute, taking my attention. So adorable. Anyway, he sent out the musicians first, and there was a huge battle that was won. And I was reminded, I had never correlated that with the triumphant entry. And Jesus comes in on a donkey, and the children are crying out and worshiping him, and the people are putting their clothes for his donkey to walk on, and they take palm leaves and are waving palm leaves. And there is great rejoicing, just like there was in the day of Nehemiah, and whenever they went and they rejoiced and they won that big battle during the king's time. And then there were different victories that, even like the battle at Jericho, Joshua, God had them all walk around Jericho for 7 days, and they blew trumpets. And it's just interesting how different things, God has different things for different battles, or different things that he has us do. And that is where we need to be sensitive to him, because there are particular ways God wants us to get the victory. But anyway, Jesus was going out to Jerusalem, and they were crying out, even the children, and there were people rebuking, I think it was the Pharisees rebuking them and Jesus, and saying, you need to tell them to be quiet. There was that religious spirit always comes against that kind of worship. And he said, if they would be quiet, even the rocks would cry out. And I was realizing or thinking about this, and I realized how that was the greatest battle that was ever won. And, I can get emotional thinking about it, because, Jesus going to lay his life down for mankind. He who knew no sin became sin, that we might become the righteousness of God. He came, and it was preceded by worship. What he came in to do, dying on the cross and laying in the tomb for the heart of the earth for 3 days, and then rising again, and then ascended. Even God had worship precede that, because that's how important worship is to him. The King is worthy of our worship. And it preceded the greatest victory that was ever won, where the enemy, Satan, was defeated. The thing that held us, says the law of commandments in the ordinances, he nailed it to his cross. There was no legal right that the enemy had any more against us. He's kicked out of heaven. The angels fight at that time I believe Revelation 12 is a picture of the crucifixion from a heavenly viewpoint. And there's this battle that's being won, because they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto death. And that victory was won when Jesus died. And we see a heavenly perspective of that victory, but it was a victory nonetheless, and it was preceded by worship. And then the end comes in Revelation, where we are seen waving palm leaves and worshiping him in heaven. And I've actually, during a very difficult time in my life, I actually saw myself there. And it's kind of where I had branched into a new way of thinking, a new way of believing, more a spirit-filled way of believing. I had experienced the baptism of the Holy Spirit, and I was not raised that way, and I knew it was going to cost me a lot. It was going to cost me my family, and I never imagined that. But when you're raised in a very different, strong belief system, let's just say there's not really religious freedom in some different belief systems, and you can't really be led by God or his spirit and still maintain a relationship. It's impossible. I tried, and I knew it was going to cost me. And I remember I was sitting in the car because I was crying, and I had driven to run an errand, and I knew this was going to cost me. And so I was praying through it in the car because I needed to process this through. And I remember I had my head down, and I saw two things. I saw Jesus smiling at me. He was happy with me. So even though people were very upset with me, if Jesus is happy with you, it's really okay. Because at that time I was getting very confused that I was doing something wrong. If I was just doing this the right way, people would know this was really God. My family would know it was God. And I didn't know that there was no way I could unless belief systems change. I thought if I could do something the right way, or love enough, or and sometimes that just doesn't work. And so I really felt like I don't know, I just felt a lot of just condemnation over it, even though I was doing the right thing. At that time, it was when you have a lot of accusation coming against you, it can be very confusing, especially when it's spiritual leaders or your family who are your spiritual leaders. And so I remember closing my eyes, and I saw Jesus smiling at me. And the second thing I saw in Revelation, us waving. I saw when he showed me the end. He's like, you're going to live victorious. It was like in a glimpse. It wasn't like an open vision. I've never had that, but it was a very strong mental picture that stays with me to this day. This was like, I don't know, 18 years ago or something. And this mental picture is so vivid. And I saw the end. He said, you're going to live victorious. And I saw myself waving these palm leaves and being so happy, like I was never upset, I'd never lost anything, and it was all okay. And it was just beautiful. I remember clinging on to those two things because I had a couple of rough years ahead of me. It was going to be like another 6 or 7 really rough years. And I didn't have to stay that long. But when you're raised in a very religious background or a very legalistic background, it feels wrong to leave. And so it took me a very long time of renewing my mind to know that I could. But I clung on to those two things. And I had no idea I was going to have a love for not only worship and music, but also dance and flags. And it wasn't until years later until I actually got my first flags, and I loved it. And it's like I was born for this. It's kind of like you just, when David had to dance, you just think about the King and what he's done for you, and I love worship and I love playing music, but in dance you can completely let go and just go for it. Whereas in playing a violin or piano, it's quite technical, and so I can let go and go for it, but it's easier to do that with flags, and I love flag worship. And so in Revelation we see that that's the end. We are worshiping him in that way, and it's beautiful. And I just wonder how many palm trees there must be in heaven or here, wherever we were, or the new earth, or in heaven. But anyway, it's so beautiful, worship. And so I felt like tying those things in with Nehemiah would be really a good way to end that part of the dedication of the wall. It's so beautiful. So I will end off with birds. Where are they? There they are. They have been here playing the whole time, and I think it's a little bird couple. It's very, very cute. They just And then this beautiful sunset here.